The Chronicles of Darkness are often portrayed as a world where behind the veneer of normality is a conspiracy, is a supernatural realm that if you dig deep enough into what is going on in the normal everyday life of people, you will discover that there are sinister forces, evil forces, and things that do not have your best interest at heart and can easily kill you, manipulate you, or use their dark powers. But one thing that I find scariest of all is the idea that you find out about that world through not being turned into a vampire, not dying and becoming a ghost, not figuring out your family is made up of werewolves. You do this by a traumatic triggering event that makes you piece together pieces of your memory and realize that you are just a very tiny mortal human in a large supernatural evil world. And Hunter is not a game I've played, but it's a game I've wanted to play for so long because of the feeling of vulnerability that I really, really would love to evoke in a tabletop role-playing game. And having had the opportunity given to me by Onyx Path, I was going to say Hunter the Vigil. The Hunters did not tell me because then they would have some problems. That's breaking the Vigil. That's breaking the code. But Onyx Path gave me the second edition, which is currently in a manuscript version, is currently in development, and there is currently a Kickstarter for it, which is at £63,000. And there's 6 days to go as of recording, probably 5 days to go by the time you'll see this. And I've had a look. I've never played Hunter before. I'm new to the Chronicles of Darkness, so this is the perspective of someone who's really intrigued by the idea, the premise, and having read it, the variability in the different types of stories you can tell, the different types of characters you can portray. There's a lot of very cool stuff in here. Hunter is being reimagined with the idea that there are more monsters now than there have ever been. And so in the daily or nightly fight against evil, hunters will have to decide between understanding things they shouldn't be delving into, sacrificing their own lives, their own loved ones, or preserving the things they are and love, or giving into despair in this endless, brutal fight for the survival of your community. And to create that kind of horror story, this book doesn't just provide you with a world, provide you with the factions, the possibilities for your player characters, and send you off on your merry way. It doesn't have an exhaustive list of abilities, weapons, spells, or what they call them, endowments in this. There's a literal toolbox of things you can use to create monsters, create powers, create factions, and spooky places. Like, if there's anything that you want to create from a film you love, like whether it's Friday the 13th or whether it's Evil Dead, like no matter on, or it could be Annihilation, or literally any scary film that you've seen, there is a tool set to create a place or an ability or a monster that represents the things that you and your players really want to fight against. And it's actually kind of incredible that there's such a core of beautiful representative abilities in this, such as the very important element to this game, which is called tactics, which, as I mentioned, I'm learning about for the first time while reading this. Tactics allow you to do very useful basic things, such as exorcise a ghost, identify whether a person is truly a monster or just an average Joe. You can use these as a team to tell the kind of story. So if you're doing a haunted house, then you will need the exorcism tactic. Whether it goes right, whether it goes wrong, there are a ton of different options for how it can turn out depending on how your rolls go and how your role play goes. What's really impressive about this book is the fact that there are pre-made versions of these already that you can use. So if you are interested in playing a Lucifuge who is a child of Lucifer, they have demon's blood in their veins, and they can use that power to summon demons or summon hellfire. To use this ability is to dabble in things that really, as a hunter, you should be fighting against. So you can play off of that kind of do I, don't I kind of story, which is amazing. Or you can be a Men in Black style gung-ho American hero who is part of Task Force Valkyrie, and they have lots of lightning guns and cool visors and memory wiping abilities like drugs that can make people forget, or like goggles that can let you see the true form of something. And where these things come from, who knows? But these things, these powers, these factions exist already for you. But if none of them sound like your jam, and there are a lot of them to spread across basically any flavor of horror or conspiracy that you can think of, then you can make one. It's got a list of things that you can do to describe how a conspiracy or a group of hunters came about. You begin with a concept for them. So if they are a cult of hero worshipping druids that want to fight the evil spirits that have invaded their city, then that's where you begin. And then these druids use their religious gatherings to share information. They discovered that there was something not quite right in their town. And then you write out its history. One day at the summer solstice, something funky happened and people's eyes went black and blood poured out of their noses, and they heard the voice of an evil spirit. Like, you can go through this stuff, and then like the different versions. There's the druids, the kind of religious leaders within this group. There's the people who want to do the handiwork, who don't believe that much. I don't know. There's usually 3 different factions, and then your status. So this is an actual mechanical dot level thing that you can apply at 1, 3, and 5 dots. So if you have 1 dot in status, you can call upon them to get a safe house at any member's place in the city, or if you're at 5 dots, you are able to call a gathering of the druids. I just made this up on the spot. This is how they do it, though. So there are rules for creating basically anything that you need. I think this may take a little bit of getting used to for some people, because in the book, for instance, if you are creating a monster, there are a list of powers, dread powers, that they can use and inflict conditions or tilts on the environment, which is how they kind of express bad things that are happening, or maybe even good things, to carry forward through the story and express negative or positive effects. That's neither here nor there. We will get onto that later, but the dread powers are listed in this book as relatively generic. So I don't think that's a bad thing, because let's just actually look it up in the PDF. Unfortunately, I can't show you the PDF. That's the because of it's Onyx Path don't want me to, but I can tell you what's going on in my head when I'm looking at the PDF. So that's good enough. Hang on. There's a bunch of them, shifting into animals, creating evil portals, plunging areas into darkness. They're all very generic, but appropriately dreadful and powerful and scary, which is what you want, right? But they are a bit generic, so it is upon the games master to use them as a starting place from which you can describe more gruesome versions. So it's the most generic one in here is Dread Attack. The monster has an innate natural weapon it can use for attacks. Fangs, claws, spiky spines, whip, tail act as weapons. Decide if the weapon has a damage rating of 2 lethal, or it inflicts a condition or tilt upon hit. With the 2 version, it does both It can be taken multiple times to represent different natural weapons. Most generic. It's very useful if you have terrifying claws, or if you have an aura of poison around your monster. Like, you can play this any way you want, whether you want it to be terrifying or whether you want it to be cheesy, because that's the vibe I'm getting from this book, is that it is so variable and tunable to your specific tastes and the way your group wants to play. You could play like the most awful B-movie adventure in this, or you could play an intense psychological horror that you can extrapolate from everything that's going on in this list of abilities and places. I'm really getting into it, and I really want to play it. I will say that I've been looking through the book, and there are a lot of things that say when something attacks you and causes a problem for you, you get a tilt or a condition. I go to the tilts area of the book, and it's very difficult to actually understand. The conditions are seemingly permanent versions. It might just be me not reading properly, but you can get amnesia, or you can be broken literally, or metaphorically you can be crippled, deprived, demoralized, embarrassed. These are things that reduce your dice pool. Tilts also say they're condition-like, but not permanent. I guess they do similar things and inflict narrative problems. So if your arm is wrecked, if you've been beaten down and knocked to the floor, it changes the conditions under which you're hunting. So it's kind of vague, and I guess it's a combination of mechanical and narrative effects there, but throughout the book I've had trouble understanding that. But I mean, I don't even know if they're in the first edition. They seem kind of cool though. It will give you can describe them as an effect while they're happening, but also write something that would cause it and something that would end it. So if the players manage to trigger either of those, you can write in exactly how it happens. These can be environmental, or there is one really nice thing that they've written in to sort of level and make sure that these are used for the horror aspect as opposed to describing how your character normally is. And it says, many of these tilts are mechanical expressions that reflect a sudden and immediate impact on the character's physical or mental health following a dramatic moment or act of violence. They are not to be used to represent long-term disabilities in your game. It is assumed that disabled characters uphold the vigil just as well as able characters do. And I really like that. Another effect that I like about describing monsters as individuals with their own powers and environments is the fact that this is not a game about using other monsters from other Chronicles of Darkness books. You can use this book on its own without even the base Chronicles of Darkness game. You can add on, you can use them in conjunction with other parts of the Chronicles of Darkness world, but the effect is that you are a hunter going into the unknown. You are a hunter that doesn't know anything at the beginning. You are aware that there is evil out there, maybe vampires, maybe werewolves, but what is a werewolf? What do? Do they transform into wolves, or are they just big and strong and bestial? And in fighting them, you learn that a werewolf is allergic to silver, or at least this werewolf is. There's only probably going to be one, and a group of hunters can really only take on one strong monster at a time, or maybe as some of their minions. There is a tier system that controls what you want to be going up against, whether you want to include politics in your game, whether you want to include the possibility for betrayal and stuff like that, or whether you just want to reenact that small town gang just learning about some injustice happening in their town and they need to gang together to fight the monster. Like, Stranger Things style. But as in Stranger Things, you don't really know what the Demogorgon is when you begin. You're like, it's a creature, that's for sure. How does it turn up? How does it get to places? Where do these people go when they disappear? No one knows. And through your hunts, through your investigations, you figure out what this specific abilities are of this one person, this one monster in this one place. It's a fascinating way to go about it, because you don't just take Vampire the Requiem vampires and put them in the game. You don't just take Werewolf the Forsaken and put it in there. It is a singular enemy. And I like that a lot more than knowing metagame-wise what you're up against. Because you might be wrong if you're metagaming and you're thinking, that's a vampire, they're going to have fangs and they're going to have the ability to obfuscate or celerity or something. I like that a lot. I'm going to share with you a couple of bits of the lore that I really enjoyed reading, and we're going to start off with Task Force Valkyrie again, because it seems like they are the people who are like, hell no, not today, Satan. You're going down with my super anti-ghost bullets. Ta pa 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 pa. And every now and again in the book, it's like, yes, these are epic anti-ghost bullets. They leave a weird smear in the twilight when you hit a thing that is supernatural, but you don't know what they're made of. You hope they're not magic. However, there is, as this is a world-spanning conspiracy of hunters, a question hanging in the air about exactly what the leaders of Task Force Valkyrie are up to. They've been seen meeting with people, alchemists. They've been seen meeting with mages and people from, I think it's called the Council of Bones. Forgive me for not knowing the lore of this particularly well. And you're not sure where that's going to lead. Also, a change that seems pertinent to mention is the fact that the Lucifuge are not able to sacrifice other people to use their powers. They have to sacrifice their own blood, their own health points to activate their infernal demon abilities, which is very cool, and I think removes some of the evilness. It makes it more of a moral quandary when you're like, do I use this demon blood ability to fight evil? I mean, I'm kind of repenting for my sins here, but if I'm using this stuff, am I sinning more? Who knows? As opposed to, I murdered a person so that I could use my abilities. I'm definitely a bad person. Are we the baddies? You get a lot of those moments. And the way it was presented in this book is that is a change from first edition. Correct me if I'm wrong. I might be. But that seemed really cool to me. And another edition that I really enjoyed reading through is the Slasher Chronicle. It continues the idea that there are more monsters in the world now than ever before, and it is based on slasher flicks. It is a chronicle set up so that no matter what tier you are at, whether you are a small group of hunters, you are a small coalition of different hunter groups, or you are a worldwide conspiracy of hunters with superpowers and stuff like that, you can fight against these Freddy-based enemies with lots of different abilities and MOs to investigate, and how they are either fighting each other or maybe a hunter that you know has a possibility of turning into them. All you know is that there are lots of them, and they're not all directly fighting hunters. They're not all victimizing normal citizens. Some of them hunt monsters as well, and there is a huge conspiracy to unravel here, whether you're at the top tier or whether you are fighting one person who is terrorizing your town as a tiny group. And it is quite complicated because of that. It's very open-ended. There's no, you go here, then you go here, then you go here. There are multiple options and places to explore that you can kind of present to your players. It seems like a more of an open world chronicle design that I don't think is necessarily bad, but for the newer among you might need a little bit of prep before you start jamming that. It also contains a new compact and conspiracy. Because of this uptick in slasher activity, you get the Vesku, and you also get 9 Stars, who are a Hong Kong-based compact of Hunters. Vesku are a really, really cool design. I don't know whether they're inspired by Stranger Things, but they give you the teleinformatics endowment, which is I really love this description, the wintergreen process that all agents receive, where you undergo drug treatment and conditioning and training to unlock parts of your brain that allow you to do things such as go into meditation and see the future, or in a hall of mirrors that may or may not be another place in the world or various universes. You can have a polygraph kind of psychic ability. It's very cool. It is something that you activate by taking damage, which is very 11, because you're going to get the blood trickle from the nose or the ear or eyes or something like that to represent this access to a brain power that you shouldn't really have. And it's very cool. I like it. And you can do very cool things like extend your sensors into nearby cameras. Let me know what your thoughts about Hunter the Vigil are in the comments, whether you like the changes, whether this has been a useful video to you, and whether you want to play a campaign of it, because I sure do after reading all of this. But until next time, thank you to these wonderful patrons, and you can become one of them and help me and get behind the scenes stuff. But until next time, link in the description for Hunter the Vigil Kickstarter. Goodbye.